What's up, everyone? Jackson Warfield here. It's compilation week. Today, posting the compilation of the two videos of my 2026 update to the top 50 games of all time. Now, the reason why I'm posting a compilation this week is because my attention is elsewhere. It's on next week's video, got a special one coming, and also I got my first giveaway, which is a strange thing. So, yeah, look forward to that. In the meantime, though, we got the upload an hour plus update to the 2026 top games of all time, so you can just watch that.
The time has come to update Jackson Warfield's top 50 games of all time. I'm Jackson Warfield, and my list is a little bit different than most reviewers' top 50 games lists. You see, when I rank my top games of all time, I give credit to all the good times we've had with the respective games, even if I don't like them anymore. So it's kind of like a best players of all time list. Like, obviously, you know, Will Chamberlain isn't the player he used to be because I think he's dead. But he's still up there on the best players of all time list if you're talking basketball players. So you can have a board game that is completely dead, never gonna play it again. I'm still gonna put it on the list if it was very good in its prime. Because my list is a little bit more sticky like that, it doesn't change as much year over year. Going from number 50 to number 11, covering the board games that have changed a lot. We're gonna first start off with some games that have left the top 50. Let's play the in memoriam music for the Academy Awards here, I guess. All right, we're gonna start off with the games that left the top 50 last year. Number 92, Splendor Duel, which was number 50 last year. Splendor Duel dropped 42 spots, not because it's not a good game. Splendor Duel dropped 42 spots kind of because it ruin Splendor while improving on it. So what happens now is when I want to play Splendor, I keep thinking, all right, well, Splendor Duel is better. And Splendor Duel is a better game than Splendor, in my opinion. But the problem is then Splendor Duel is also a little bit more complicated. And because you have to relearn the game a little bit, it no longer hits the same niche as Splendor. Like, it doesn't scratch the same itch anymore. It's a little bit different. So it's a weird game. I almost wish it was its own game because I can't divorce it from Splendor in my mind. Brand new last year, and I was excited about it, and it had it number 50. It's down to number 92 based on how this experience has been since then. Dropping from number 35 to number 71 is Ethnos. Now, the fact that there was a new edition of Ethnos released, and I don't like the artwork for this new edition, like at all, doesn't help the game, although that really shouldn't matter too much. The reason why Ethnos got a new edition is because, well, I guess it was a little bit divorced of theme in the first one. It was very generic fantasy creatures and stuff. And, well, the new Ethnos has some more interesting stuff going on. It's really just kind of the same game. It's still kind of generic, I guess. Not saying it has to be like a licensed property, but I don't totally understand the new theming either. The real reason the game has dropped down, though, is just because I haven't played it too much. It was a bit of a rough year in terms of area control games. I really didn't play a lot of area control games this year. So they've become a little bit more of an afterthought. And we'll see if 2026 is a comeback year for area control games for me, because I'm originally like an area control gamer. I don't hate Risk. I'll put it that way. Risk is in my top 100. So that's how much I like area control usually. Dropping from 49 to 64 is Seven Wonders. And this is where Seven Wonders, it's at its best with 7 players, is kind of becoming a problem because you don't end up playing it nearly as much. And the other thing that happened in 2025 that caused me to drop Seven Wonders down is I played another game that is a competitor for the crown for best 7-player game, and that's Between Two Cities. Now, I haven't played the Between Two Cities 7 players yet. I've played Between Two Cities with less players. I played with 3, and it was pretty good at 3. But now I want to play it at 7, and I want to play that at 7 more than Seven Wonders. So Seven Wonders has lost a little bit of luster here. So Seven Wonders is down to 64. Falling from number 34 all the way down to number 63 is Mysterium/Mysterium Park. It's interesting. I wonder how much of a trend is here where when you have two games that are similar, I drop them down a little bit. And which is ironic because you have more choices now, because Mysterium is a fun full evening style game. I have fun memories of playing Mysterium. Mysterium Park replaces it as being the game that's easier to get to the table and streamlines aspects of the game. But now if I want to play the game, I don't know which one I want. And while the history of the game is important, the amount that I do want to play the game matters too. And it's fallen down a little bit. Cascadia fell a little bit. Cascadia is down to number 60. It was number 44 last year. Cascadia was brand new for me last year. Had a lot of fun playing it with my wife and daughter. I think it's a good game. Relaxing games don't tend to be games that I have the most fun memories with. Like, part of my enjoyment from Cascadia came from the fact that this was one of the first games, like full games, that any of my kids have really played. And my daughter's my oldest. So Cascadia gets a little bit of a personal bump there, but because we've now played a bunch of other games, that luster has faded a little bit. So Cascadia is around number 60. Falling all the way from 28 to number 59 is The Crew. The Crew, Quest for Planet 9, which is the version I have, is a cooperative trick-taking game that's very fast to get to the table, but no longer holds the crown of the obvious best cooperative trick-taking game. I'm not going to cover in the video today, but I'll say the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game is number 54. So it has actually passed The Crew on my cooperative trick-taking games list, which maybe trick-taking games will be its own list one day. Yeah, The Crew has fallen down because it's now the cooperative trick-taking game if you need something relatively quick. It's not the cooperative trick-taking game if you need something to play over the course of a few nights, because I prefer the story for the Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game. Galaxy Trucker slipped a little bit, slipped from 48 down to 57. I played Galaxy Trucker once in 2025 as a second edition. Wasn't a great play. I kind of rushed the teach. I thought I remembered how to play a game better than I did for some of the nuances of the rules, but that didn't really affect the ranking too much. I have a lot of memories of Galaxy Trucker. Honestly, just new games bumped it down. Survive Escape from Atlantis fell from 41 to 56. I also did not play that this year, but it's still one of my favorite 3-player games. But that's kind of the thing keeping it from sticking more, is the fact that you need 3 players to get a good game of Survive Escape from Atlantis, or the new version, Survive the Island. Blood on the Clock Tower has fallen from 33 to 53. Blood on the Clock Tower is one of the games that I have played before that I am most excited to play again. I have situations in mind when I will bust it out. And really cool thing, if anyone is close to Hartford, Connecticut, there's an improv group that has now played Blood on the Clock Tower as a show you can go see. So that's a cool thing. Look up CT Improv for that. But Blood on the Clock Tower, you have to have a group you go play it with. And I haven't done that. I haven't gone to go play with a group in a while. And I haven't had a big enough party to bust it out either. So Blood on the Clock Tower slipped to number 53. And the last game to cover that's fallen out of the top 50 is Evolution, or Evolution Climate, which is, I think, a slightly improved version of Evolution. This is another one where it's just got passed by some of the newer games on the list. Evolution is great. I have great memories of playing Evolution with friends. It's fun when you play with especially competitive friends and you eat each other's animals, and you have, your own ecosystem starts to develop. So Evolution's a great game, but it's just not quite in the top 50 anymore. Moving now into the top 50. We have a new entry to the top 50 at number 50 with Happy Salmon. Happy Salmon is establishing itself as one of my go-to party games. In my daughter's 3rd grade CCD class, that's a Catholic, 1 hour a week church school kind of a class thing, end of the school year party, the volunteer teacher asks for parents to bring games.
The bat signal from the roof of City Hall.
And I was the only one who brought games, because of course I'm going to bring games. I brought Happy Salmon. The kids stayed late from that class while the parents are watching them play Happy Salmon. So you had a bunch of 8, 9-year-old kids playing Happy Salmon, excitedly playing it again and again, kind of quietly. I think a few parents went and bought the game after that. Happy Salmon, I busted out a few times here. Happy Salmon was 64 last year. Now it's up to number 50. Downforce, new entry to the list. I had not played Downforce until 2025. Downforce can be played in 2 modes. You have regular mode and beginner mode. Regular Downforce is a fairly straightforward racing game where the real game is betting on who's going to win. A lot of games are like that. Maybe not a lot of games, but some games are like that. You also have the beginner game of Downforce, which is, in my opinion, if it were its own game, is maybe the best kids game. The highest kids game I have on this list is actually number 58 for Kids Chronicles, which is a kids version of Chronicles of Crime. So Downforce, if it were a kids game, it would be the top one. But that's partially why it's so high, because it has a fairly fun racing game on top of it. Even if it wouldn't be one of my favorite racing games, that combination makes it that much better. A lot of games in the 40s here have slipped a bit. Treasure Island's gotten bumped down. I haven't played Treasure Island in a bit. Cyclades is an area control game. I mentioned the area control games didn't really get played that much this year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Warhammer 40,000. So here's the thing. Warhammer was number 20 last year. It's now number 46 because I had been spending a lot more time on Warhammer at the time. I have not played Warhammer 40,000 in the past year, and I don't feel compelled to, partially because a new edition is coming out in 2026, almost certainly, and it takes up the time of a lot of other games. I kind of wish when I got into Warhammer, I got into a easier rule set, like maybe Warhammer Underworlds instead of 40K, but I still love painting the miniatures, and I spend still more time on Warhammer than any one game. So that's kind of why Warhammer 40K is falling down. There aren't a lot of miniatures games on here. Miniatures games are a little bit more of a time investment to get them played. So it's tougher. It's tough with the dad schedule. Making YouTube videos also takes up time that could be spent playing bigger games like this, for me at least. Carcassonne has fallen from number 26 to number 45. Carcassonne is becoming one of those games for me like Catan, where I used to play a lot. I used to really enjoy it, but I'm not super compelled to bust it out anymore. And Carcassonne also, because I have expansions for it, it's a little bit tough to sort out the expansions. I actually have 2 different editions of the game, each with different expansions, which is nice to have. But it's almost too much. Like sometimes buying expansions for a game makes it harder to get played as well. So not that it ruined it for me, but I don't anticipate playing Carcassonne particularly soon. New entry to the list this year, Ready, Set, Bet. Ready, Set, Bet is a game actually like Downforce where you're betting on who's going to win a race. In Ready, Set, Bet, you have no control over who's going to win in a horse race. You're watching the horse race as it goes, and it's a race between you and the other players to make the right bets when you have just enough information to make good bets on who's going to win.
Let's let Wes Welker know that. He bet on the right horse, and all of a sudden he started walking down the stairs with a big stack of hundreds, and he started handing out $100 bills to spectators walking by. Until
Ready, Set, Bet has a lot of other things going for it, though. One, Ready, Set, Bet can be played with a ton of players. Ready, Set, Bet comes out of the box playing, I think, up to 9 players. 9 players out of the box. But with 2 copies of Ready, Set, Bet, you could actually play the game with 17 players. You have one person running the horses and everyone else placing bets. You just get 2 boards when you have 2 copies of Ready, Set, Bet. They're just betting on the same race. Ready, Set, Bet also is a sneaky good kids game because kids can run the horses. Beyond that, even, kids don't have to be that old before they can start playing the game, and it's a great math game. One day, I want to get a list out that is the best educational board games, and Ready, Set, Bet is going to be on there for math because it has math that kindergartners can do. So just adding up dice together, practicing that, what's 5 plus 3. But then you also get math for the little bit older kids, like 2nd and 3rd graders and beyond, of trying to do the math on what bets are actually the best investments, and you start playing with the cards and you add to the game, it works its way up pretty well. So that's why Ready, Set, Bet is in its first year after I've played it. I played it for the first time in 2025, and it's in my top 50. Jaipur has jumped up from number 65 to number 42. Jaipur's kind of swaps spots in a way with kind of like Cascadia here, although it's a very different game. So Jaipur is a super clean 2-player game. It's fun. It's unique. You are making sets of cards that you're trying to trade in for money, where you got some cool board game mechanics, just because, board games have these mechanics, but it's a good mix of these board gamey mechanics. If you put sets of a certain card in first, you get more points. If you take cards off the market row, they get refilled and your opponent gets first dibs on those cards. So you got all these interesting decisions going on in games of Jaipur. It's very quick. I don't even think I played Jaipur too much in 2025, if I played it at all, but it's one of those games that has now gone, my memory of it has been more crystallized as being overall positive. It's funny, just because you didn't play a game doesn't mean that it drops down on your list. Sometimes games will start to stand out more over time, and Jaipur is one of those games for me. And number 41, jumping onto the list from the 60s as well, is For Sale, which was number 62 last year. For Sale is such an easy to bust out card game. For Sale is almost my default backup game at game night, where if we need something quick to play and you have 3, 4, 5 players and you need to play something in 20 minutes, it's just so fast that it's also board gamey. It's a good one to bust out if you don't want to play a game that is like a super light party game. For example, Flip 7 just missed my top 50. It was number 52. Flip 7 is a fun, exciting game, but it's not overly thinky. For Sale is more thinky. For Sale is more thinky. Because it's established itself as the backup for me, it is now in my top 50 at number 41. At number 40, we have another new entry to the list. This is The Quest for El Dorado. The Quest for El Dorado is a deck builder racing style game. A lot of the best games, a lot of the best modern games will use elements of deck building. The Quest for El Dorado is one of the best examples for this. And I enjoy racing games because I enjoy the tension of trying to decide throughout the course of a race, say, how fast to go early on or how much to save up for the end of the race. That's always a built-in mechanism with racing games, unless you've done something unforgivable like design a roll and move racing game in 2025. Categories has jumped up from number 46 all the way up to number 36. And this is despite the fact that I don't think I played categories in 2025 either. Instead, my memories of playing categories back in the day when I wasn't even a modern board gamer yet, those memories have persisted. It might be the fact that I've played a bunch of other party games this year. And they have just made categories stick out that much because of how fun categories could be, especially with friends who you're willing to argue with.
It's rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, duck season.
Maybe not the game for casual acquaintances, but it's a classic. In the days before the golden age of board gaming, this would have easily been in my top 5. Jumping up to number 33 from number 59 is Suro. I mentioned For Sale's my backup game at game nights. Suro is my go-to appetizer game. And Suro got a purchase this year, as in I taught it to someone who then bought it right after. Suro is a fun game. It's a game where you're trying to stay in a board by putting tiles down that set the path of your stone. So you're trying to keep your stone on the board. Your paths will intersect with other players' paths, and you have to try and stay away from other players. Otherwise, they might set you off the board when it's not your turn. It takes the same amount of time to play Suro, whether you play with 2 players or 8 players, because the board has a set size and you just go around playing one tile at a time. Suro's great. I haven't played Suro of the Seas or the other one with lights, but I don't think I really need to because Suro's kind of nailed what it is. Number 31 is Magic Maze, which has jumped up from 47 to 31. Magic Maze is a great cooperative game, and I think I may have gotten a 9-year-old kid into board gaming by introducing him to Magic Maze. One of my kid's friend's siblings, actually. Magic Maze is a cooperative game, but unlike a lot of cooperative games, it's a very fast cooperative game that has more to it than games like The Mind, which is extremely simple. The Mind I have at 55. I have Magic Maze higher because it's also one of those games that will make everyone around the table stand up. You're trying to race the clock and control a character without talking. You have to jump in and know when it's your turn to move. So Magic Maze got some great plays in 2025 and is up to number 31. Number 30, Imperial 2030. Another one in this category, as in it's a game I didn't play in 2025, but my memory of it got stronger. You see, Imperial 2030 is the game that got me into modern board gaming. It's the game that broke me away from thinking I want to play Risk to I want to play all of these crazy games that I see on the shelves of this obscure game store, because it showed me what a modern board game can do. Imperial 2030 is a financial game that disguises itself as an area control game. And it's an excellent game for busting up with someone who's used to playing Risk. And if they try to play Risk with Imperial 2030, they will find that other people will buy out their shares in the country they're controlling. It's a bit of the stock mechanism you see in trading games, just applied to a world domination kind of a game. And the goal of the game is to make the most money, not necessarily to dominate the world. I'm really excited to get Imperial 2030 played again. As more time has gone by, I've realized more how much it sticks out in my memory as being an important game for me, which is why it's now up to number 30 all time. Coming in after the video here with an edit, because I, for some reason, didn't talk about Atlantis Rising, which is new to the list and is all the way up at number 28. Atlantis Rising is a cooperative game, and it's a big cooperative board game. Big as in it takes up a lot of table space. Surprisingly elegant, though, in how it works. It's a cooperative worker placement game. It's one of the best cooperative games that doesn't rely on any of the pandemic system mechanisms, really. I mean, I guess it kind of has a deck, but you're really not playing Pandemic. It doesn't feel like you're playing a different version of Pandemic at all, which is saying something for cooperative games. I wish I had played it earlier, but the second edition isn't too old. I played it multiple times this year. It's now up to number 28. And I'm looking forward to eventually getting a 7-player game of this one in, although that might be a little bit of an undertaking. One day we'll do that. Moving all the way up from number 42 to number 21 is Dixit. I mentioned before that Kids Chronicles was my top kids game on the list. The beginner version of Downforce might have been my top kids game if it were its own game. If you consider Dixit to be a kids game, and it is a game you can play with kids, it probably would blow them both out of the water. because Dixit, I played a lot of Dixit in 2025, including with my kids. And for periods of time, my 3-year-old, who was actually, with my 3-year-old was 2, he was easier to kind of get involved with the game of Dixit. He's not as easy to get involved with the game anymore. My older 2 kids have a lot of fun with it. It's a game that I keep hearing people want to bust out, and I finally started getting expansions for Dixit to expand on that card pool, which in the original card pool of Dixit, you kind of blow through the cards quickly. In fact, you'll see cards more than once in a game. Getting at least 1 expansion for Dixit, I actually think is kind of a crucial thing to do. It's the best of the games that deploy that apples to apples mechanism that people know from games like Cards Against Humanity or Fun Employed or Joking Has or any of those games. I have Fun Employed on my list. I don't have any of those games anywhere near Dixit, as we're a game where everybody is trying to get their cards to fit a story or a situation to win points or the favor of others around the table. Dixit is a classic. It's number 21. Number 19, Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride has fallen down a little bit more than just being replaced by newer games, because it has been a little bit tainted by my playing of Ticket to Ride Legacy, Legends of the West. I do not have Ticket to Ride Legacy on this list because I'm not done with the campaign. I've played 7 of the 12 games, I think it's 12 games, in the Ticket to Ride Legacy campaign. What we are seeing is a little bit of a cannibalization of Ticket to Ride with Ticket to Ride Legacy. Most likely, my favorite version of Ticket to Ride will end up being Ticket to Ride Legacy, which means that when I play Ticket to Ride, it will feel like I wish I were playing Legacy. That's not to take away from the fact that I've played a lot of Ticket to Ride. I have a lot of versions of the game. I like a lot of the maps that you have. It's a great system. I think in a lot of ways, Ticket to Ride is a superior game to Catan as a gateway game. And I know a lot of people that play a lot of Ticket to Ride. It's just slipped a little bit. Although number 19 all time isn't anything to sniff at. Number 18, The Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship. This is a very high entry for a game that's new to the list. Lord of the Rings, Fate of the Fellowship came out in 2025, and it is the highest of the 2025 releases on this list. Fate of the Fellowship is a cooperative game in the pandemic system that does a very good job of deploying Middle-earth theme on the game. It's interesting. I usually don't like it when Lord of the Rings games take the core story of Lord of the Rings and twist it a little bit. But there's something about the fact that Fate of the Fellowship is a cooperative game that makes me not mind it as much, because you have a deck of cards that is changing the story on you and not your friend who's changing the story, who's violating the canon. Because you're playing throughout the events of Lord of the Rings where you're trying to destroy the ring, but the game doesn't stay on a rope following the main story. The game is also one of the nicest productions of a board game I've ever seen, especially at the price point. The game comes with its own dice tower modeled after Barad-dûr. You got Nazgul miniatures. You got a bunch of mission cards where you choose different missions or really quests within each game. And there's so much variety that you get from just these extra cards. It was like they weren't holding anything back for an expansion like you see in a lot of games. Same with having a lot of characters you could play as. Like it was a very generous production. I love Fate of the Fellowship, and in this one, I would be shocked if it drops down at all. This game is only going up. It's just, I haven't built up enough memories to justify putting it higher than the games that are still above it in the list. There's a reason why Flame Rouge has dropped down a little bit, because I like Flame Rouge just as much as I ever did. And I actually just got the Grand Tour expansion for Flame Rouge, which is a way of playing Flame Rouge. And I was already trying to play it in Tabletop de Warfield, which another one of his videos will be coming out soon. See a link on screen for Tabletop de Warfield, which is a playthrough video I've done. Flame Rouge is a straightforward bike racing game where you're deciding whether or not to exert your biker's energy early in the race or late, or in the middle, or whenever it is, because you'll win this race if you know when to go. It is a very simple system that you can play with just about anybody that captures the fun of racing. But it's just, there's not quite as much to it compared to now other games that are out there as it seemed in 2024. That's why now in 2025, it's dropped down from number 11 to number 16. And the last game I'm going to talk about today in part 1 is The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, which was new in 2024, debuted at number 9 on the top 50, is now down to number 12. Why is that? Well, The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth is a reimplementation of Seven Wonders Duel, which is a game I've played dozens of times. And it was, in my mind, in my experience, an improvement on the game. But 2 things have happened in the past year. One, other Lord of the Rings games have come out, like Fate of the Fellowship, that have made it so that it's not the most Lord of the Ringsy game that I could realistically get played in an evening. For example, War of the Ring, it takes, you're not. War of the Ring is a huge time investment, and Lord of the Rings is a card game. It's deck construction, so you got to learn the thing. So if I want a Lord of the Rings game, I'm probably going with Fate of the Fellowship, so it loses a little bit there. It also hasn't 100% replaced Seven Wonders Duel, because there are some situations where I still want to bust out Seven Wonders Duel. If it were a true replacement for Seven Wonders Duel, it would be potentially jumping above it. Spoilers, Seven Wonders Duel is still to be revealed on this list. But because it hasn't completely replaced it, losing that luster was enough to bring it down a few spots. It's still number 12. Amazing game. I feel almost a little bit awkward too, putting so many Lord of the Rings games high on the list. I'm not about to dedicate the channel just to Lord of the Rings tabletop games, although it's starting to seem like that's a realistic niche on YouTube. That's number 12. It's right there with Monikers and Skull, which Monikers and Skull and Sheriff of Nottingham, for that matter, will trade spots every year that I do this. I've been doing this for longer than I've had a YouTube channel. I've had my top 100 plus games every year, and those games are always around the same area. Number 10, Heat. Pedal to the metal. In 2025, I finally played Heat.
Hey, I just saw Heat. I saw that 6 years ago.
Heat was released a few years ago, but I was keeping it on my shelf and waiting to bust it out, kind of like waiting to try a wine for a special occasion. And the reason why is because I was pretty confident I was going to enjoy Heat. I've always loved racing games. In fact, I've always loved racing. Racing is one of my favorite things. And to be honest, there aren't that many amazing racing board games out there. You know, growing up, maybe you tried Candyland. Yeah, that's not really a racing game. People have mixed opinions over older games like Formula D, or Formula Day, as it used to be called, at least in Germany. And since it came out, I've always enjoyed Flamme Rouge, which is a modern racing game that, in my opinion, much better encapsulates the thrill of racing than Formula D does. Heat is a 1960s Formula One themed game where the basic mechanism is what gear you're in. So 1, 2, 3, or 4 determines how many cards you play per turn, and typically the cards are the number of spots you go. So you want to be shifting up to go fast in certain areas, and then when you get to a turn, each turn has a speed number you have to get under, otherwise you risk going too fast through the turn. So you have to be able to be efficient with your cards. So you got a hand of cards and you're cycling through it. But here's where the game gets interesting. The heat mechanism in Heat is a mechanism where you start off with 6 heat cards, and you have the option to do things with your heat cards to go faster. For example, you can spend a heat card to play an extra card on your turn. You can spend a heat card to shift an extra gear, and you also spend heat cards when you go through turns too fast, which is fine unless you run out of heat cards, because if you run out of heat cards and you need to spend one going through a turn, you spin out. And there are other ways that you can get your heat under control. There are cooling type cards. There are actions you can do in the race that allow you to get rid of your heat. So it's that balancing act, not just in terms of deciding how fast to go and how to time up with everyone else. Because take like Flamme Rouge as a comparison point. Flamme Rouge, it's all about how you are doing compared to everyone else. You all have pretty much the same bikes, and you're trying to be efficient with drafting and then knowing when to break away from everyone else at a spot where they're not going to catch you before the finish line. In Heat, you're doing that, but you're also very focused on trying to get the best speed out of your car by efficiently managing your heat. So the heat mechanism plus the racing mechanism work together to create both of those, like you're right on the razor's edge thrills that is the magic of racing games and the magic of racing in general. Heat's already in my top 10 after only having played it over the course of 2025. I've played it a handful of times. Most of its rating comes from the fact that I really like it. It's a very good game. I'll get some bonuses, though, because of how much I personally enjoy racing games. And if I build up more sessions of this over time, it could potentially climb even higher in the top 10. So Heat, Pedal to the Metal is number 10. Number 9, Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is a drafting, tableau building style game. It's a card game, really. And what you're doing is you and one opponent, it's a 2-player game, hence the duel name. You're going back and forth, picking cards that will often cost resources, but can also generate resources with the ultimate goal of scoring the most victory points. So you start off the game getting, say, a lot of stone and brick, And at the end of the game, you're trying to build buildings that required like 3 stone, 2 brick, a glass, paper, etc. But you can't just draft any card. It's not like a drafting game where you pass cards around the table. What you have is a ziggurat of cards where as you select cards, you may unveil other cards for your opponent. So you got to be careful which ones you pick. Not only that, in Seven Wonders Duel, you have 3 win conditions. You have most victory points, but you also have shortcut victory. If you at any point have, I think it's like 6 defense shields more than your opponent, you get immediate victory. And having a lead there gives you points as well. If you collect 6 different sign symbols, you win by scientific victory. It means you're technologically advanced when your opponent. Victory points don't matter. So if you are winning in the game, you got to keep an eye out for your flanks here. These are like your flanks, the military flank and the science flank, to make sure that your opponent doesn't David you out of your Goliath position. Seven Wonders Duel was the game that arguably more than any other game, got my wife and I into duel-style board gaming. I think the first play of the game is probably April of 2016, I'm going to say. And we played the game dozens of times. The game has been somewhat usurped by the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, but the fact that there's now a game that my wife and I prefer to Seven Wonders Duel a little bit doesn't take away from the years of fun that the game has provided. For years, this was the game that I would want to get people as like an add-on to a wedding gift. So, when people get married, maybe they haven't discovered board games yet, but maybe they will. And maybe they didn't put board games on their registry, but for like a little, $20 to $30 thing to throw on top of there, if you already did get them something from their wedding registry, it's a very nice addition. There's some times too where we like to go back and play Seven Wonders Duel, even though we have Duel for Middle-earth as well, because the game has a little bit of a different feel for it. The resource building feel is a little bit different than the Lord of the Rings feel. So it just depends on your mood. And sometimes we want to play it just because we have had so many good memories of it. It was also the first, in my opinion, of the duel-style games, which started a trend of games getting dual versions. For example, Splendor Duel, Azul Duel, Cosmic Encounter Duel, Everdell Duo. It's got to be I'm going to have to make a video on those at some point. But 2-player versions of games that are better than the 2-player rules that a lot of games have. Because you see, Seven Wonders, which is what Seven Wonders Duel was originally based on, had 2-player rules, which involved a weird computer third player, and it wasn't that good. You weren't going to play Seven Wonders if you only had 2 players, realistically. You almost certainly had a better game to play. But Seven Wonders Duel became that better game to play. That's why it's number 9. Fell 1 spot since last year. It was at number 8. Number 8. Balderdash. Balderdash was number 7 last year. Balderdash is the highest rated party game on my list. Back in the days before I had any idea what modern board games were, as in, I think I logged on Board Game Geek once when I was in high school. So this would have been early 2000s time frame. And I looked at the top games of all time, and I remember looking at that and say, like, where's Risk? How is that not up there? And I think Puerto Rico might have been number 1 when I looked. I think I'm like, what's this? I think I remember seeing some game on there that was like a sailing game. At the time, I had no idea what I was missing out on, but I still loved certain games, and certain games that have still now stuck out as games that I still love, despite all the new games I've played. Despite the hundreds of games I've played, a handful of games still stick out. One of those games, the most prominent of those games, is Balderdash. Balderdash is not really a bluffing game. It's really more of just a lying game. So the way Balderdash works is you take turns reading a prompt. It'll be something like, say, a word that no one's ever heard of, and everyone then becomes challenged with writing up the definition for the word, making up a definition. The person who read out the word will write the actual definition, and you'll mix the actual definition with everyone else's definitions of the word. The person who read the word now will read all the definitions, and people will vote for which definition they think is the one. And the answers people put are hilarious. And it's actually better sometimes too if you don't try too hard to put definitions out there. Sometimes people will do like inside joke references. You can kind of ruin Balderdash, in my opinion, if people say things like, Jackson's a dumbass. But really, that's more of a group dependent type thing. If you genuinely try to play the game and come up with good answers, it's the most fun, probably the most like crying laughing I've ever done during a game. And it's not just word definitions. You have weird laws. You have acronyms. You also have other games, like there's a modern version of Balderdash. You have Beyond Balderdash back in the day. The original copy of Balderdash I still have here. It's been well loved, as you can tell. I think I got the cards from like Beyond Balderdash in here. We got some on there. Let's see. I actually haven't done this in a while. I've grabbed like an old answer. So they have movies, and you have to say the plot. So here's an example of one. A Dummy Talks is about a wooden dummy who has his teeth brushed and hates the taste. A crash dummy mysteriously walks away from a side crash test. So that sinking feeling, I think that's another movie. A young boy reaching the age of puberty develops that sinking feeling in a field about learning what it is to be a man. HRBA, the Havana Rabbit Breeders Association. PCOA, the Prison Curators Occupational Alliance.
Damn you, Unified Atheist League!
Damn you, United Atheist Alliance!
Down the Allied Atheist Alliance is Clanfields.
Two brothers go into the Appalachian Mountains to kill the boar which gored their father. Zamburak, a monster who lives in Quebec and terrorizes Zumbinis. That's an interesting reference. Baron Dookie, a type of African drum. Dr. Elizabeth Svensson. So that's another thing. They say someone and you say what they did. Led an expedition to the rainforest discovering thousands of insect species. HHMI, Howard Hughes Medical Institute. A group of ladies do everything together.
It's okay. I have one too.
The Amazing Dr. G. Dr. G is Julius Irving, a.k.a. Dr. J's nemesis. Oh, it's Dr. J's nemesis growing up in Philadelphia in the 60s playing basketball. Razorback. A wild boar terrorizes an Amazonian village, so Razorback is sent to hunt it down. LGCA, Loose Goose Charity Association. Bum Clock. The stunning conclusion to Bum Tights 2? PTCA, People Terrorizing Cats Association. Balderdash, my favorite party game ever made. Number 8 of all tabletop games, all time. Number 7, Cosmic Encounter. Cosmic Encounter is actually new to the top 10, partially because I played it more in 2025 than I had in some recent years, and this is a little bit of the effect of I was reminded of how good it was, as the memory got a little bit more fuzzy as we're in the end of 2024. Cosmic Encounter is a game that's actually kind of old. It was designed in 1978 originally. And the way it works is it has, at its core, a war mechanism, as in 2 players are going to be playing cards and the higher number wins. But trust me, there's a lot layered onto that.
Ogres have layers.
The Destiny deck will decide which 2 players are going to have an encounter in a given round. And the players each have a hand of cards, and the hands could be anything. They'll play the card that they want. They also have ships. So you'll start off with 5 planets and 4 ships on each planet. You can send all the ships you want into an encounter if you're on the attacking side. If you're defending side, they're going to pick which planet of yours they're going to attack, so you got to defend with the ships on that planet. Those ships are just 1 each. So if you have a card of 8 and then 4 ships, that you have a 12. The game also gives everybody an alien ability, as in everyone's their own alien race, and everyone's ability is going to be a little bit different. For example, the Macrons are kind of famous. Each of their ships count as 4 instead of 1. So first thing, that's pretty strong. You have the Void, who can actually destroy ships permanently. They have an alien race that wants to lose matchups. You have an alien race that is able to reveal their card and choose their card after their opponent's already revealed it. There are 50 in the base game different alien races. They're all very different. But here is where the game works. This is the final layer. Before an encounter, you can invite players from around the table to join your side. And if you're on the winning side and you're the attacker, they join your battle. And if you win as an attacker, you land on their planet. And all your allies also land on that planet. First to land on 5 planets wins. That's how Cosmic Encounter works. As the defender, you can invite others to help you defend as well. And then if you win the battle, you still get other rewards, even if you don't get colonies out of it. And this is the magic mechanism, because the game becomes self-balancing. It doesn't matter that all the alien powers are so different and some are more powerful than others, because people will not want to ally with you if they think you're going to win the game. They're going to ally against you. So it's self-balancing. In fact, the secret to Cosmic Encounter is not having the strongest alien faction. It's appearing to be the least of a threat, because no alien faction is so strong that it can just bulldoze everybody. Cosmic Encounter is the best game that I've ever played for showing what modern board games do better than other board games. There's a reason why Catan is so popular, for example. Catan is a game where it's a relatively simple base to the game. You know, you're building resources, trying to build quickly. But the trading of Catan is partially why it's so popular, because people that aren't normally into board games are going to enjoy Catan because they enjoy trading and negotiating with friends. They have fun doing that. Cosmic Encounter brings that dynamic, and it brings it at an even higher level because you have the alliance type negotiations and the deals being struck and the betrayals. And Cosmic Encounter has a number of things going for it above Catan. One, there's more variety game to game because you have all different alien races. Two, people get frustrated in Catan because of the dice-based resource generation and the starting conditions in the game. Cosmic Encounters has equal starting conditions. The only starting conditions you get are you get the choice of 2 alien races and you pick which one that you want to go with, which is also a very important design decision. If you just had to go with the race you were dealt, a lot of people wouldn't have as much fun with that. Cosmic Encounter, provided you get at least 5 players, and I think the magic number for Cosmic Encounter is 5 to 6 players, it is about as much fun as you can have playing a game in one evening, period. The Fantasy Flight Edition, which came out in 2008, was maybe technically the 4th edition of the game, and that's the one where you get all the expansions now. I also I have Cosmic Odyssey. I haven't played Cosmic Odyssey yet. That's like a campaign expansion you can play with Cosmic Encounter, where you play with the same people over time. Probably can mix and match some people inside the campaign. I'm excited to play that, at the very least when my kids are old enough to really negotiate and play a game like that. Cosmic Encounter is another one of those games where I've played it and then people have immediately bought the game afterwards. The one thing stopping it from getting higher is it doesn't always work. If you have like a 4-player game or a 3-player game, it's not always going to work. And the reason why is the alliances get too mechanical. So 3-player game, you're just a 2v1 alliance all the time. It can be fun, but it's not really the same kind of a game. 4 players, 3v1 alliances happen a lot. 5 players and 6 players, that's where the fun is. 7 and 8, you can play with 7 or 8 with enough expansions. 7 or 8 players, I think it's a little bit of a drawback because 7 or 8, you might be waiting for a while until you're part of the main encounter, but it's not bad. So Cosmic Encounter up 7 spots from number 14 in 2025 to number 7 going into 2026. Number 6, Twilight Imperium. Let's say you've played a few games of Cosmic Encounter and you want more. Hour or 2, maybe 3 hours of fun you're getting from Cosmic Encounter evening isn't enough. You want to have fun for an entire day. You want to have one of the best days of the year. Maybe best days of your life. You bust out Twilight Imperium with that same group you used to play Cosmic Encounter with. Twilight Imperium is a space opera game. It's a big game. The game is legendary within the board gaming community. Shut Up and Sit Down did a documentary on the game. Josh Hutcherson just talked about it on Jimmy Fallon.
They have PDSs. You bombard the PDSs. It takes away the planetary defenses.
But if you bombard it... No, I've never played this game in my life.
Everyone has their own alien race, but instead of just being based around the relatively simple encounter style mechanisms, you have now a galaxy that you're exploring, exploiting, the 4X kind of a thing. But you also have alliances. But I'll just give you an idea of the scope of this game. About 1 hour into the game, you start voting on laws to enact within the galaxy. Twilight Imperium has some expansions too. The release of Twilight Imperium 4th edition was huge within the board gaming community because at the time, there were a couple years into the golden age of board gaming. Everyone knew Twilight Imperium 3rd edition was an amazing game. It was some people's favorite game of all time. So when 4th edition was coming out, it was a momentous occasion. I played Twilight Imperium a number of times. I've actually never lost a game of Twilight Imperium, although I've probably jinxed that now. I can't wait to get the game played again. The challenge with getting Twilight Imperium played is the fact that it takes so long. You need to set aside like 6 to 9 hours at least to play the game. And you do need at least 4 people to play the game. It's another thing, kind of like Cosmic Encounter. You kind of could play with 3. I think Twilight Imperium works better with 4 than Cosmic Encounter does because the rounds are more nebulous. At given moments, who you're allying with is more of a soft alliance as opposed to a literal, my ships are going to help you in this round like you get in Cosmic Encounter. So you can make it work with 4. I haven't played a Cosmic Encounter game with 8, which you can go up to with the expansion. When I spend time thinking about like what games do I want to get played? Like if I'm past the phase where most of my friends getting married, so I don't have a bachelor party board gaming weekend to look forward to or anything like that soon. But the next time I host people to play games over the course of a good chunk of time, Twilight Imperium is very high in the list. It's actually, I talked about in the top 50, Blood on the Clock Tower. Blood on the Clock Tower is an event game where you need like 9 people to play Blood on the Clock Tower. And I'm looking forward to playing Blood on the Clock Tower the next time I have a bunch of people over to play a board game. But Blood on the Clock Tower does not touch the level of epicness that a game of Twilight Imperium does. It's a little bit of the effect of where people spend 8 hours a day playing a video game like EVE Online. So like, why don't you just get a job? Like, like you're doing the same thing. It gives a kind of a similar effect where it's like you take such ownership over your faction, and progression you feel over the course of an entire day is so significant that it's almost like you're capturing a year's worth of like a startup company, like highs and lows, into one day, which is kind of like, that's what board gaming is. It's like capturing areas of life and putting them on the tabletop. The way that Twilight Imperium does that is why it's number 6 all time. Highly recommend it for people that have already stepped into board games and need to know what the best of the best is. Twilight Imperium is where to go there for the multiplayer best of the best experience. It's number 6. It was number 6 last year. Number 5. Pandemic. Pandemic is the original, not literally original, but the original cooperative mainstream board game. If you made a Mount Rushmore of modern board games, almost certainly Pandemic is on that Mount Rushmore. I may make that video soon too. In Pandemic, you and typically 3 other friends, although you can play with 5 or 6, there's a lot of expansions and versions of the game you can play with. But the general idea is you're all be working together to cure diseases. There are going to be 4 diseases in the standard game of Pandemic that you have to cure. And you have to balance between treating diseases and curing diseases. And each of you have player powers that make different tasks easier. For example, you might have the medic. The medic is special because the medic can treat 3 disease cubes in a city as opposed to just 1 at a time. The dispatcher can move around the board, which can be good for a lot of things. Could be good for treating, or it could be good for curing diseases, because the way you cure diseases, you get a set of 5 cards of the same color, and you can only trade cards with people typically if you're in the same city. On a given round, you'll take your player turns, and then the game will react. Again, it's a cooperative game, so you're playing against the game. You have an infection deck where cities will be infected and get disease cubes put on them. If a city gets more than 3 disease cubes, an outbreak happens, and every city next to it gets a disease cube. So you really don't want that to happen. The ways you lose are either you have too many outbreaks, you run out of disease cubes for one of your diseases, or you run out of cards, so basically the game just times out. Pandemic is such a good game that it spawned the Pandemic system style games, which were thematically different versions of Pandemic. I think it started with Pandemic Cthulhu. Then you had the regional ones, Pandemic Iberia, Pandemic Rising Tide, Pandemic Fall of Rome. For this entry list, I'm lumping the pandemics together that are in that original Pandemic system, so like the disease games. I'm not including the Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert games in this entry, because those are different enough. It's by the same designer. They're all by Matt Leacock, but it's a little bit different. So I'm keeping those separate. I also kept Fate of the Fellowship as a separate game, because while it's based very heavily on the Pandemic system, I think it's far enough removed from it. It was never called Pandemic system. It's not disease anymore. I know some of the Pandemic system games aren't disease anymore either. Pandemic is a great game. It's not a perfect game by any stretch. The game famously falls victim to a little bit of the quarterbacking problem, where people that are very good at the game can tell people who are not very good at the game what to do.
Tom Brady and Bill O'Brien, his offensive coordinator, fill in the blanks.
Most likely the right thing to do is to do what they're telling you if you want to win, which that's not fun. But what helps the game is the fact that it is also, like Seven Wonders Duel, one of the most important games in my life for having fun in the hobby. My wife and I also have played a lot of Pandemic, and we actually, before my collection was quite this big, we played the original Pandemic and played through the expansions on the Brink and in the lab through all the different modules, and State of Emergency actually. Tried to play through all the different modules at the max difficulty. I played so much that my hands were starting to feel funny from shuffling the Pandemic cards so much. We bought a shuffler just for Pandemic cards. The Pandemic cards, it wasn't quite enough cards so you could shuffle it infinitely. I was only getting not really paper splinters, but it was making, again, I was feeling it from the shuffling. I always enjoyed the Pandemic app. You could play Pandemic by yourself too and control multiple characters, so it could be a good solo game. I haven't played all the versions of Pandemic. I haven't played Rising Tide. I decided against getting a nice clearance copy of Rising Tide from Barnes & Noble back in the day because I thought I had enough games at the moment. I'll mention Pandemic Legacy is not a part of this one. Quick referendum on how I'm categorizing games for this list. When games are similar enough, especially if they integrate with each other, I'm going to include them as the same entry because it's hard enough to rank games like when you're comparing a game like The Mind, which is the simplest game like ever designed, to Twilight Imperium, which takes 9 hours. It's hard enough to rank those. It's even then to extend ranked games to say, okay, well, what about Ticket to Ride and Ticket to Ride Europe? Where do they go? Well, Ticket to Ride Europe slightly higher. Is there a game in between them? I don't know. It's almost like comparing a game with and without its expansion. So what I'm doing is I'm lumping all the expansions into a game, and then the similar enough games go with it too as just different versions of the game. I'm also including Pandemic Hot Zone here, so I'm including the simplified versions of the game that are in theory playable if you just remove components from the original game. I'm not including kids versions of games. I'm not including dice versions of games, card versions of games, dual versions of games. Those games are all very different from the original. So like Twilight Inscription has nothing to do with Twilight Imperium. There's no clear way to organize games for top lists like this. Like I struggle deciding whether or not Mists over Carcassonne should be its own entry because it's an expand-alone cooperative of Carcassonne. So Mists over Carcassonne I lumped with Carcassonne, and I decided to keep Pay of the Fellowship separate. It's hard to organize this, so I'll just say that. The upshot of all this is Pandemic is number 5, same as in 2025. Number 4, Star Realms. Star Realms is, in my opinion, I don't know what the right word is. It is the deck builder. Star Realms is kind of like Dominion. It's a deck builder back before they started putting deck builders into every other games.
I don't know what's going on with cranberries, but they're getting in all the other juices.
So Star Realms is my preferred flavor of cranberry juice. Dune Imperium, cran apple. Lost Ruins of Arnak, cran grape. Quick explanation on deck building for the uninitiated. In a deck building game, you start a game with a basic deck, say, of 10 cards. And you'll generally have money cards and scoring cards. And on your turn, you'll draw, say, a 5-card hand, and you use money cards to buy stuff, and attack cards or action cards to do other things that might help you win the game or otherwise help build your engine. And when you buy cards, they go in your discard pile. And once you go through your 10-card deck, now you have a discard pile that has more than 10 cards because you just bought cards. Shuffle up your discard pile, and now you're in the deck again. So it's separate from deck construction games where you build your deck before the game. Games like Magic the Gathering, where you show up with a 50-card deck or 60-card deck or whatever it is, and you start. Star Realms and Dominion start off similarly. In Dominion, you have to decide at which point during the game do you stop trying to get engine-building cards, card-acquiring cards, and start getting just straight points cards. And then when the game's over, you see who has the most points. In Star Realms, you are both building up your engine, but also directly attacking your opponent. And so when your opponent's basically their health, which is the authority in their game because you're trying to control a galaxy, but it's when your opponent's health gets to 0 that the game is over. So it adds theme to the winning mechanic, whereas that was kind of sorely lacking in Dominion. Star Realms is also the game that, along with Pandemic and Seven Wonders Duel, is the one I've played the most with my wife, which, I don't mean to phrase it like I don't play with other people too, but when you have young kids, you play a lot of games with your spouse. So that's going to be important to what your best games ever are. The games you've had the most fun with are. The biggest thing with Star Realms for me this year was playing Star Realms Legacy. And I have Legacy games as separate from the base game. Going back to the whole diatribe I just gave on what games count as the same game, I think Legacy and the games are their own games. So Pandemic Legacy is separate from Pandemic. Star Realms Legacy I have is separate from Star Realms. Star Realms Legacy was a little bit underwhelming. It wasn't on the top 50. You're not going to see it here. Quick sidebar, the reason why Star Wars Legacy didn't give me the sense of progression game to game that a lot of other games do. It was like when the starting conditions of the trade row and the cards you're buying changes, but your deck doesn't change. In Star Wars, it felt like it was kind of moving sideways, not forward. Whereas other games where it's more of a board game than a card game, the board changing is sufficient to feel like you're making progress in the game. In Star Realms, I needed my deck to change over time, and it barely changed. There were different scenarios and rules and little mini expansions being put in there, but that's what was missing for me, I think, in Star Realms Legacy. But that doesn't hurt Star Realms at all. If anything, it just took up plays from Star Realms in the year. I don't have all the expansion for Star Realms. There are a lot of little expansions for Star Realms. You have 3 base points you can get into Star Realms with. You have Star Realms Colony Wars, and Star Realms Frontier Wars. You could also use the Infinite Replay deck of Star Realms Legacy to start Star Realms. I have to take another look at that if there are other modifications you need as well to do that. But that's an interesting question. But again, Star Realms is great. It's my preferred pure deck builder. Some people say that it's kind of in that no man's land between pure deck builder and thematic game that uses deck building. I actually think it's kind of in like a perfect spot between the two. That's not a valley for me. That's a mountain. And Star Realms is at the top. Star Realms is number 4, same as last year. Number 3, Heroescape. I'll preface. Almost fell down below Star Realms and maybe even Pandemic this year. Because, see, there's a lot to the history of Heroescape. Heroescape was first released in 2005. It had an initial print run to about 2011, and then the game was discontinued for cost or for otherwise. The game had a brief mini resurgence when Wizards of the Coast made Arena of the Planeswalkers, which was a Heroescape-ish kind of game that integrated in theory, but didn't take off at all. Starting in 2024, so now we're in the era of the Renegade era Heroescape, which new expansions are being released now for Heroescape every couple months. The thing that almost killed it for me, though, is the new Heroescape stuff just got too expensive. And a big part of the fun for me of Heroescape is having a complete collection. Now, this isn't really fair. I don't advise anyone go off and buy a complete collection to Heroescape unless money is like no object to you, because it's tough to find some of the old stuff. Heroescape is a miniatures game where you build your board. If you're not familiar with miniatures games, they're different from board games usually because the game is more so in the different units you play with. So a miniatures game, you'll have like a rule set. And for Heroescape, it's a pretty straightforward rule set. You're playing on a hex board with elevation, and characters will have movement and range type numbers, and you'll go back and forth with your opponent or opponents moving one unit at a time, which could be like, say, one hero unit or say a squad of figures. Every unit has its own card that has its own abilities. And there's nothing that's just generic, just do nothing. Everything has an ability. So the more Heroescape characters you have, the more variety the game gets. Many of my best board gaming memories are with my friends from high school. And when we were in college, we would all go off to college. We all went to different colleges pretty much. And then we would come home for holidays and summers. And when we would hang out, the number one game we'd play was Heroescape. And this would usually entail us all going to a friend's house. Maybe we'd start at like 9 p.m. We're like, 18 to 22 or so. Like we're staying up late, stay up to like 3 a.m. sometimes. And we would set up a board of Heroescape. We'd build the map. We would draft armies. We would usually split into teams. Usually do like a 3 versus 3 or 4 versus 4. And we would divide up cards and pick our armies within points limits in the pool that we were dealt to us. Then we would deploy the units and go. I've had more thoughtfully strategic discussions for Heroescape amongst my fellow Heroescape teammates than I ever had playing recreational sports growing up, even school sports for that matter. That's kind of why it's so fun. There's enough variety in there that there's always something interesting to talk about, but the game is not so complex that you always have someone there feeling like, how does this work? Once you learn the game, you know it. And then you add the excitement. So there's dice rolling when you actually make attacks. And you have some funny things where some people swear that they have bad luck and everyone kind of believes it because somehow they always roll poorly. But it's enough dice rolling to add excitement without making it random. So you'd have the edge of the seat moments to say, I got a character, if he rolls a 20 on a D20, I'm going to take over an enemy unit. Now, maybe I get 3 chances of this in a game if I'm lucky. And maybe this hasn't happened in a month. But I'm using this guy now. It's maybe the 4th time I've used him this summer. My unit's named Nagooks, and I roll the 20, and I get the Mind Shackle. I Mind Shackle our opponent's dragon. But wait, it wasn't my turn yet. We forgot. Hold on. It was someone else's turn. So they got to run their turn. So now, I lost my 20. But now it comes back around to me. It's like, try it again. Roll the 20 again. And this time I get it again. Heroescape, baby! Woo! Like, moments like that would happen when you play miniatures games. And Heroescape, by being easier to get into than other miniatures games that like Warhammer 40,000, is why that game is now number 3 all time. And even with the rising costs of the game, I guess in theory I could keep up with it. I can't. It's too much. It's too expensive now to keep up with the game. But the memories are still there. Heroescape, number 3 all time, same as last year. Number 2. Pandemic Legacy. And for reference, this is Pandemic Legacy Seasons 1, 2, and 0, which was the third season of the game. I've alluded to legacy games here. I didn't really fully explain what a legacy game is, but a legacy game, again, for those uninitiated, is, I don't mean to say that condescendingly, a legacy game is a game that changes over the course of plays. So you play the game, and maybe you're putting stickers on the board, and the next time you play the game is different. Usually you'll play this game as part of a campaign, and usually when you're done with it, you either have a permanently changed copy of the game or you don't play the game again. The fun of the game is that, say, 12-game campaign you play. At first, people see a campaign game and they think, I don't like the idea of a game I can only play 12 times. But you take a step back and realize that most games you don't play nearly 12 times. Legacy games are a lot more palatable from the glass half full perspective. Because if you play a legacy game, you'll almost certainly play through the whole campaign. I love legacy games for that reason. I love the sense of progress and the sense of world building that you get throughout the course of a campaign. Pandemic Legacy wasn't the first legacy board game. Risk Legacy was kind of the first one. But Pandemic Legacy was the first really good one. In Pandemic Legacy, you're playing pandemic, so you're trying to control disease in the world. And as you're playing through the campaign, things keep changing and your characters keep changing. For example, whenever you have an outbreak in a city, that city destabilizes. And you get to the point where you can't even go into the city anymore. It's so, like, they're rioting, it's bad. And so you get other mechanisms in the game after a while to say you can actually barricade that city. So diseases can drop in that city, but it won't outbreak because you've barricaded all the ways in. And that city has fallen. And that's the storytelling element of that this happens over the course of several games. It's thrilling. You have characters that will develop strengths and scars. So if a character is in a city when it outbreaks, it gets a scar. Maybe the character can only do 3 actions per turn, or takes an extra action to enter a city with any disease cubes. And so you think, oh, we're using the medic for the first 3 rounds, and it'll be like Joe the medic. But Joe the medic, he's a liability now. We can't run with Joe the medic. We need someone else because Joe the medic has seen too much. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 was amazing and captured all this very well. Pandemic Legacy Season 2 was meant to be a post-apocalyptic, whereas the apocalypse was Season 1. Season 2, you are like seafaring people that exist after society ends, and they tried to kind of flip the game on the head, where you're trying to distribute supplies now as opposed to control disease. So it's kind of like a weird backwards pandemic. It didn't work as well, but it was still a good game and also really interesting artwork for post-apocalyptic. And then Season 0 was a prequel, as you might imagine, where you're like, you're dealing with the Russians, and turns out these diseases were like a Soviet plot or something. If I had to rank the Pandemic Legacy games, I would go Season 1, Season 0, Season 2, and a lot of people would rank them like that. Season 0 is the most streamlined, probably the best design of the 3 games, but I would think too streamlined, because in Season 1, because it wasn't as refined, there was more of a sense of fear of if we screw this up, we might really be screwed up here. So there's more drama, because in Season 0, they deployed more mechanisms for catch-up mechanisms. They didn't want you to play 6 games in and then get frustrated with the game. For the people that now got saved through the new mechanisms, they probably enjoyed the game more. But if you were able to survive Season 1 without needing to open the box that has the secret contents in it that you're only supposed to open if you're really, you get that fun because you don't have that safety net, that Mario Kart catch-up mechanism waiting for you that is waiting for you in Season 0. So ironically here, the better designed game became less fun. I put Pandemic Legacy as a full 36 game or 36 month-ish campaign together. It was my number 1 game of all time last year, but it's now number 2. And my number 1 game of all time, for those familiar with the channel, you know what this is. You shall not pass! Lord of the Card Game is a deck construction cooperative living card game. So let's break that word now into its smaller pieces. Deck construction game, meaning you build your deck in advance of playing the game. So you have a 50-card deck in Lord of the Card Game, and it is a living card game, which means you have a pool of cards, but you build up your pool of cards not through booster packs like you would in, say, the Pokemon trading card game. You build it up just by buying expansions and just adds to your card pool. So it's the thrill of deck construction and the fun of deck construction without the, you know, the try to get the rare card slash what it really comes down to if you play the game is like buy the cards on eBay kind of a model that you get with, say, trading card games. This is a great model that Fantasy Flight Games released, and I've talked about extensively in my retrospective, The Lord of the Rings, the card game, the greatest modern card game. Link to that video on screen. The game is cooperative, so it could be played solo, and I've played Lord of the Rings, the card game, more solo than I have every other game I played solo combined. Usually playing as one deck, or you can play with two decks, so like you're mimicking two players. They play, so call it playing two-handed. You play up to 4 players for all scenarios, and some scenarios allow you to go beyond 4. Game at First is a one quest at a time kind of a game, where you'll have a quest deck, and as you play, the quest deck is, you have cards being revealed from the quest deck that you're trying to overcome. Meanwhile, you have quest parameters you're trying to meet. So that's what the challenge is. It's a great system where it uses the randomness of card draw to add variety to the game, as opposed to dice rolling, which seems inherently more fair when you're doing it. A lot of people get frustrated with bad die rolls. I don't, but a lot of people do, understandably. Card draw, there's randomness to it, and they eventually, in the game's been around since 2011, eventually started designing almost every scenario to be very high quality. Early on, some of the scenarios weren't amazing. Some would be just like, you just got screwed sometimes. That doesn't really happen with the modern stuff. The game's initial print run was from 2011 to 2020. Then after a break, they re-released all the best stuff starting in 2022. So if you're watching this video in 2026, you should be able to find this game at your local game store, at least find it online. And if you're deciding what to buy, you start with the core set of the game. Then if you can't find starter decks, you look for hero expansions, usually increase your card pool. And then you can also buy campaign expansions, which is the other aspect of the game, is you can also play it as a campaign game where you have string multiple missions together. It's really more of a one at a time game, but you can play out the campaigns, and it's very fun to do so. The reason why the Lord of the Rings, the card game, is now #1 on the list is honestly kind of because of this channel. It was already #2 all time. So let's start with that. This is the game that I just like barely liked, and now it's my best game of all time because of YouTube. That's not what happened here. But it passed pandemic legacy because of how much fun I've had talking about the game, how well it has resonated with my YouTube audience. And there's like little things, like for example, Caleb Grace, who's the lead designer for the game for most of its life, his wife commented on one of my videos saying they were listening to it. So the game is now that much more important for me. So I've talked about in this video about how important it is, the plays of games I've had through time. So all the games I play with my wife, the games I play with my friends. The Lord of the Rings, the card game, now, by being a game that also has helped create a lot of more enjoyment through the videos I've made for it, it's now #1 all time. I've debated a lot of times too whether or not this channel should be just based on the game. I think my interests are too diverse across board gaming that I would want to make the channel only about the Lord of the Rings, the card game, but I'm going to keep making videos for Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm targeting at least one a month because of how important the game is, also how into it I am with that game versus everything else. It's one of the few games where I think I am qualified to make like a lot of videos about the game. I didn't mention enough in this video, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan too. So I love this game for its ability to kind of skirt on the edges of established lore in a way that doesn't feel like you're violating the lore of the game at all, without having to necessarily stick to the whole destroy the ring plotline of the Lord of the Rings books and movies. So that's the big change for 2026. Lord of the Rings, the card game, is now #1 all time. It's funny how like all board game content creators have their top games of all time lists for the most part. Part of it is it's just fun to make this. I love going through and listing out games because the hobby itself it's a hobby of variety. So getting some organization on your games and ranking them, it's a fun activity. If you want to make your own top 100 list, I recommend the Pub Meeple ranking engine in conjunction with the Board Game Geek database, where if you have a collection of Board Game Geek, you can import it into Pub Meeple and start making a list that way. I usually do that to start my lists. If you want to see what I did in 2025, I'm going to link to that video on screen. Thanks for watching. And if you want to see more of these videos in 2026, remember to subscribe to Jackson Warfield, and I'll see you in the next video.